How's everyone doing out there today? It is a Friday, July 25th, 2025. I got Cooper Hopkins here with me, and it's time to start the NHL free agency frenzy. It's been a couple years since we did this, Cooper, but I'm glad to have the time to be able to make all these notes, be back on board here with you to do this again.
Well, thanks for having me, pal. Anytime we can get on the mic together, it's a great day. It's a sunny evening here in Los Angeles, and that's one of the teams I'm sure we'll cover. The LA Kings. I've got a lot of news around them, some movement, and that's just one of these Western Conference teams. And I know we're going to cover the entire continent of North America, man. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's start as we need to. Vegas Golden Knights swing big again, but it's on the smart money. Mitch Marner is acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Nick Waugh. They were going to lose him for nothing. So Kelly McCrimmon comes out and says Marner not only fits the need for this team and has a ton of pressure too, but also where Mitch and his family wanted to settle down and spend their lives. Marner's still just 28, an 8-year deal, $96 million, will be a UFA at 2033 at 36. But he's coming off a remarkable season, Cooper. 27 goals, 75 assists, 102 points, plus 18. He's been stellar. And you also add to that depth for William Karlsson and Thomas Hertl down the middle in the second, third lines. And Vegas doesn't look like they're going anywhere.
No, certainly not going anywhere, John. And we can just say it right now. I'm confident in this. If we can presume that Vegas returns to the NHL playoffs, I think you see the shackles broken for Mitch Marner. I think he steps up, and that reputation that he can't produce in the playoff, I think that dissolves with the Vegas Golden Knights. Huge get. He was the marquee name. They nailed it.
Caden Korchak also signs an extension, 3.25 that begins 26-27, 77 games in 4 seasons, 10-point average for the 24-year-old. Could extend to a top 4 pairing on defense. They could use him. They move Nick Hagen, swap for Nashville for defenseman Jeremy Lozon. Nashville keeps 50% retention on forward Colton Sissons too. So they add more grit and sandpaper down the middle. Again, they talk about that depth. You bring back one of the original misfits and Riley Smith. About 30 to 40 points still, 34 years of age, 1 year, $2 million. Brandon Saad, who we liked from that pickup from St. Louis, as he waived that contract to come over. He comes back at 1 year, $2 million. Jacob Megna as well. The only downside for Vegas, Cooper, is Alex Pietrangelo. Again, with the double hip, he's going to be put on LTIR up till 2027. And pretty much McCrimmon came out and said he's not going to play again. That frees up an $8.8 million cap hit, which allows them to do this.
Yeah, and listen, this is apples and oranges here, but it does make me think of a former Flame, one we've talked about plenty, John, and Sean Monahan. I don't know the specific nature of Petrangelo's hip injuries, but Monahan has had both hips worked on. He's been able to resurrect his career in a pretty significant way. I think it's pretty serious if an exec is willing to publicly say, hey, this player's probably not going to take the ice again. So it's hard to hear that, but I'm going to hold out, even if it's just that 1% hope. He's a great player, and maybe there is something left for him in the tank.
So one last thing for me, Cooper, before we switch to Carolina, because they got a lot as well. We already saw Vegas as the number 1 seed. They got past Minnesota, end up falling on the side for Dallas. But again, this puts them right back in the thick of things again, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that we're also starting to see sort of in a broader picture, not that this was ever really in question, but Vegas is a destination for NHL players. It just seems like a lot of boys want to head out to Nevada and make a name for themselves. And Vegas has been a team that's been able to do that with various versions of the roster, and they continue to impress. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
So for Carolina, another one of these teams made a big splash. They're always close, but when it gets down to the thick of it, again, it can't beat Florida, but a lot of teams can't do that. Can't just blame them for that. But Keandre Miller leaves the New York Rangers for defenseman Scott Morrow to go along with the conditional first and a second round in 2026. Keandre, who I still like as a former member of the Blue Shirts, 8-year, $60 million deal, will make $7.5 until 2033. It's a 27-point season for him with 7 goals. He was even on the plus-minus, but again, Cooper, we talked about it with Chris Drury, how rocky that season was for the Blue Shirts now coming over to Carolina. I feel like he could be closer to the 43 points and a plus 12, but I'm going to have you jump in after this. Nick Ehlers, 29 years of age, 6 years, $51 million, cashes in as he's playing his best hockey in years since 2016 through 18. 24 goals, 39 assists, 63 points, plus 14. He was great for the Winnipeg Jets last year. My only concern is the durability, but he's a guaranteed 50-point lock. 20 goals, 30 assists, 50 points, plus 10 when he's healthy. He might miss 15 games a year. He did last play a full season in 23-24, hasn't since 2018. He's missed about half the season twice. On the time of it, but Nick Ehlers is excellent, and Keandre Miller is good on the back end side. I think Carolina did well here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and just a couple quick things to touch on. For whatever reason, Keandre Miller just felt like I know, listen, it's unrealistic to say this. He just felt like a New York Ranger to me, but I think the writing was on the wall. The shelf life had expired there in New York, and I think that he's landed in a really great spot. Still in the Eastern Conference, going to have some familiar opponents. And with Ehlers, we don't need to go down the details of how successful Winnipeg was last year. He was a big part of that. So, yeah, there's some injury concern, but I think he's going to be more reliable than not. It's a good move.
And for a couple more things for Carolina, one of them just broke yesterday. That was the only thing that wasn't updated in the notes. But Logan Stankoven, 22 years of age, the former Dallas Stars product, 8 years, $48 million on a 6 per cap hit that doesn't even kick in until next year, 2034. I know Jim Nill, we'll talk about them a little bit more, and Mikko Rantanen, they're happy with all of that. Stankoven, 38 points, -1 last year, but he's just getting started. Yesterday, Jackson Blake, 21 years of age, who's due $5.12 until 2034. It's a $40 million .95 extension until age 30. Again, he's 21. So 80 games played, 17, 17, and 34 in his rookie season. And for Carolina, most of their players are signed until 2032. So get used to that. If you have your jersey, you feel good about that. They're going to be here for a while. But Carolina, whether or not they make it past the Eastern Conference Finals, go to the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm about a 7.5, 8 on their moves. I like them. What say you?
Yeah, I'll meet you there. Just a little short. I'll go with the 7. And,
Okay.
And I'm going to say not for any particular reason, but even just looking at Dallas, Stankoven. I'm going to continue the theme with Miller that I mentioned with the Rangers a moment ago. I thought that Stankoven would be a piece there in Dallas for quite some time, and I think, well, certainly contractually he will be with Carolina. And I think he's going to add that youth, going to add some jump to their game. They've already had plenty of it, and I think he could push them even further in the right direction. So, yeah, I'm with you, 7, 7.5 on those moves.
So Panthers stay intact, and how did Zito not win GM of the Year was my headline for the Cats. Again, when you achieve a tangible success and you build that culture predicated to doing so, players will take less to stay with the organization in efforts to win again. That's what I firmly believe. That's why I threw that in the notes. Alexander Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, Brad Marchand, Anton Lundell, Seth Jones, Aaron Ekblad, Gustav Forsling are all signed, Cooper, until 2030. The whole core outside of Brad Marchand, who's 37, and Seth Jones, 30, who were additions this season, most of them aren't even 30 yet. So they acquire backup Daniel Tarasov. It's another Russian goaltender from Columbus to Florida. That seemed to work out pretty well. I think he will get some time on the backup side. Really, the only loss for the Cats was Nate Schmidt, the 33-year-old who was undrafted. He was awesome in the playoffs, though. 12 points, +9, 23 games, a career +120 on the blue line for Nate Schmidt. Tomas Nosek, Jeff Petrie added essentially for nothing and brought back. And Mackie Samoskevich, the U of M man, does re-up on a 1 year. But the deals are as official as follows. 8 for 8 for Bennett, a UFA in 2033. He was phenomenal in the playoffs, as you know. Won the Conn Smythe, 11 goals, 12 assists, 23 points, +5. Aaron Ekblad, little bit of a hometown discount maybe. 8-year, $48.8 million. UFA in 2033 for the 29-year-old. Season making just 6.10. 56 games played, 3 goals, 30 assists, 33 points, +11, +13, and 13 points, +10 in the postseason. And that's not all. I'm going to get into this a little bit more for I break this down with Cooper. Brad Marchand is indeed 37 years old, but here's a highlight I want to make. Bill Zito made those moves to get him from the Boston Bruins, and he added 10 goals and 10 assists in the playoffs alone. Would they have won the Stanley Cup without the additions of Marchand and Jones? I know Kachuk a little bit of LTIR, which allowed them to get Seth Jones, but I'll be point blank and honest. I'm fine with the 6-year, $31.5 million deal for Marchand until 2031. And yes, I do realize he will be 43 by the time that contract is done. He plays a physical game, but he can play on that bottom third pairing just fine for the bottom 6 and play some defense as well. Zito rewarded Marchand with that money because he helped them bring the cup.
No question question about it. And I mean, I think at the very minimum, you can say that Edmonton pushes that series to 7 and maybe hoist the cup without Marchand there. I mean, he was a major, major factor. And knowing that Tkachuk was not fully healthy, Marchand stepped up, and you just see that veteran expertise. The confidence is at 100. That's not going to change. And I think the confidence as a team is at 100. I mean, they are just brimming with belief in themselves and in their room. These are guys, you see it in the numbers, John, you laid it all out. You see that these are players who are willing to adjust contractual numbers. They're willing to drop the dollar amount to stay together. That's rare in professional sports. Yeah. It's rare in hockey. It's obviously special. They're smart enough to recognize it. And you have it in bold here. They are poised for a three-peat, I would say. I don't want to steal your phrasing there, but I think you are right on, my friend. And, I mean, if they can keep it together and Zito can keep the magic going, I mean, they're shooting for, like, Jordan rare air territory here. We're talking maybe beyond 3. This is wild stuff.
My only question for you before we move on here is Sergei Bobrovsky again. His $10 million contract is going to expire at the end of the year. That's my only concern of what happens next. But again, we talked about it initially with Bobrovsky. Everybody thought that contract was going to be an albatross. It was not.
No, absolutely right. And I think if you can see, maybe there's some evidence here that we can take from these contracts, even just taking them one at a time. We look at Bennett. If there are conversations being had between the players themselves, obviously they're sitting down with their GM and negotiating with their representation. But Bobrovsky, if he wants to re-up, if he thinks to himself, hey, I'm going to stick with my teammates, I'm going to finish my career here, maybe I have 5 rings by the time I'm done, that's pretty tempting, my friend. That's pretty tempting.
So I'm pretty high on this team, especially what I've seen in from the offseason. But now we go from UHC, Utah Hockey Club, to the Utah Mammoth, and I think that they did pretty good. They already had a good team stretching across from Arizona, but they add to it. So the lead-in that sent defenseman Michael Kesselring and forward Josh Jones of the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for J.J. Peterka. Boy, it just continues to swirl around the drain for the Buffalo Sabres because Peterka, again, 68 points, 27 goals, 41 assists in 77 games. You need a consistent performer. And Utah pretty much just got that. And then they get Nate Schmidt from the Panthers, 3 years, 10.5, 3.5 until 2028. Scott Perunovich joins in on a 1 year. You have Brandon Tanev Turbo coming across with 20-plus points, a 2.5 cap hit only until 2028. They bring back Kaori Yamamoto. Jack McBain, $21.25 million, 4.5 till 2030. He averages 25 points in the last 3 seasons. And they already have a good, solid forward group. But I like the moves out in the open, Cooper.
Yeah, I do too. I think that there's nothing here that's as splashy as some of the things that we've talked about. But Utah could make some noise for sure. I like the Tanev move, and that's not just because he was with the Kraken. I think he's made an impact really wherever he's been. Kyler Yamamoto, what you noted here, John, great flyer on a veteran minimum. And Yamamoto is still a young veteran, and I hate to say it. I mean, he was once upon a time an Oiler, and wasn't breaking any records there statistically speaking. But I think that he's a nice piece. And I'm looking at some of your notes about the defense, and I agree with you. That could be a little bit of an Achilles heel here. And I think that the Mammoth are going to be right on that cusp. If the Flames have a positive year, I think you could be looking at the Flames and the Mammoth maybe as the first 2 teams out, maybe flip one of those into the last wild card if things really go well for one or the other of those franchises.
So we talked about all the defense. I'll mention them with Dursey, Marino, Mata, Cole, Valimaki, Nick DeSimone. A lot of them under contract, but they don't really score. It's Mikhail Sergachev, the Tampa Bay Lightning man. That's already been over in Utah for a while. But that forward group, Clayton Keller, Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, you have a mix of about, if you combine those all, 180, 190 points, and then Barrett Hayden as well. Good young forwards. And as Cooper mentioned, you could flip-flop in between Utah, the Blues, the Calgary Flames. It was that close. Again, it was a series in between Calgary and St. Louis in February on the back-to-back in Enterprise that pretty much took the Flames out of the playoffs. But if we say that Utah is a borderline playoff team, that's probably where they are.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thanks for mentioning the Blues, too. They escaped my brain there just for a moment, but you could see a similar type of fight between those squads as we get into the new season. But it's going to be interesting. I think that Utah's right on the cusp, and I don't, this is my bias, I don't hate Valimaki being there as well. Could see a couple of those names that we've just mentioned, John, get a little career refresh, just a new start, new franchise, new fan base, get some of that Vegas and Seattle type of energy, and see where it takes you.
And real quickly on that, just the goaltending side refresh: Vitek Vanacek, Karl Vejmelka, Connor Ingram. Vanacek's probably going to battle for that backhand role alongside Connor Ingram. Karl Vejmelka's pretty good. 26, 22, and 8. 258 goals against, 904 a shutout. He's only due 4.75 until 2030. Again, all of this will be in the notes when it gets posted. Just want to keep everything timely. But they're good. Their goaltending's good. They got good young forwards. Exciting team to watch. Now, let's take a trip across the Canadian teams because I have a lot to say, especially on a few of these, but I want to leave some adequate time for the Flames as well because we need to have a conversation when we get to it. Montreal Canadiens up first, though. 15th and 16th pick of the recent NHL draft for 23-year-old prospect Emil Heimanen. They get Noah Dobson here, Cooper. That is gigantic. Again, New York elected the Islanders not to pair him with the first overall Matthew Schaefer, but for Noah Dobson, again, 39 points, 10 goals, 29 assists, minus 16 in 71 games were misleading because he's a 70-point player, Cooper, that's capable of 60 assists. You can also throw in Sammy Blais, Kaapo Kakkonen on a 1 year, alongside from the Checkers that were just in the playoffs for the Abbotsford Canucks, Zach Bolduc. Jacob Dobes gets his back up there alongside for the goaltending situation. But for Noah Dobson, I mean, man, oh man, that's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, really impressive, and I think with some of the names that are already there and some that have just been added into the fold, John, I think that things have been sped up in terms of the Canadiens' development and competitiveness as a franchise. You could see the Canadiens be a good team about 2 seasons from now, and I think a really good team about 4 seasons from now. This is potentially a special group of young guys.
I just want to make this quick announcement before we go to Vancouver. So for Lane Hudson, he won the Calder Trophy last year, as Matty Beniers did a couple of seasons ago. The Holland, Michigan native was a stud. Dobson's probably going to play with him. He had 60 assists, which set a record. I think this was the right time to take a swing. And as we talk about in the Atlantic Division, 5 teams made the playoffs last year: Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, and Montreal. And really, with moves like that, that's how you stay competitive. And I don't know if I see that changing, as Cooper said, anytime soon.
Yeah, and John, of course, I'll always bring in a Flames twist. I was paying attention to Hudson not only because he was just so dynamic, but there was that Calder race, and it really came down, I would say, between Dustin Wolf, who had the best rookie season for a goaltender in probably over a decade. You look back at Ottinger, et cetera, so maybe a little less than a decade, but still, Hudson had such a dynamic year, you just couldn't ignore it, and it became pretty obvious he would take the trophy. So credit to all those young guys, and Hudson's going to be a leader on the Canadiens team for a long time.
So what's your favorite soap opera in the collective? Let's go through it. The Vancouver Canucks and GM Patrick Allvin. I have to do it this way. They want to get back in the playoffs and address with top 6 needs for forwards. Yes, you heard that right. Adam Foote's going to be the new head coach, the former Colorado Av that I know so well during those Red Wings Avalanche glory days. They bring back Brock Besser. 28 years old, 75 games played, 25, 25, 50, minus 25 on a 7.25 for 7 years. That's 50.75. Connor Garland also returns. He's at the ceiling of his production with 19 goals, 31 assists, 50 points, minus 13. But I like the player. But Garland, 6x6 for $36 million. Both Garland and Best are now locked in until 2032. I like both players. They do things that aren't typically on a score sheet. But then we can start to talk about what was left of their salary cap as of July 11th. Again, it hasn't changed much since then. Thatcher Demko returning between the pipes. Again, I like Demko. 23 games played, 10-8 and 3-2, 90, 889 and a shutout. But he's really, really hurt all the time. Knee, lower body, undisclosed injuries have plagued the 29-year-old. And I see that 3-year, $25.5 million, 8.5 per, maybe is a huge risk, as management's already told him that he's not going to be able to play pain-free again. And when we have the schedule that we do going across, with many back-to-backs and 3 games in 4 nights, they already gave Kevin Lankinen, who was 30, 51 games played, 25, 15, and 10, that 4.5 until 2030. So while I like some of the players, I do not necessarily agree that Patrick Allvin is going to have these guys ready to get back in the playoffs. I know that's his goal as a GM, but I think that they're trying to supercharge something that isn't there yet.
Yeah, I think you're right, John. If we just look at the crease, you know how, I mean, look, if you're a hockey fan, you know how important goaltending is in the sport in general. And when we look at Vancouver, yeah, John, we can just look at the ages of the goaltenders that you just mentioned. 29, 30 is right around the time you should be peaking in your career. And I'm not saying that either of those netminders don't have the ability or the skill or the desire to or the pedigree to be a real top level goaltender. But if you are hurt and that interrupts what should be your peak as a goaltender, we got a major problem. And that means the Vancouver Canucks, for the foreseeable future, they have a major problem.
Yes, they do. And again, one of the ones we just talked about, the Abbotsford Canucks won the AHL Calder Cup trophy. And Arthur Shelovs, who we saw a couple of years ago, remember our broadcast with Cash the Ticket when we nailed every single one of those? Lindholm, Zadorov, Miller, Garland all scored. And he's gone. 16-7, 931 in the Calder Cup championship. Now it's going to be Jarley and Shelovs for Pittsburgh. But then they double down and do this. And I don't get it because they also helped Edmonton in this situation. Again, everything in a vacuum. I don't hate what Evander Kane brings, but I'll admit to you, Cooper, I was incredibly sour after what he did against the Florida Panthers. All the extracurricular was not needed. And I'll also say this too, whether it's fair or unfair, I will give Adam Foote his chance. But what necessarily did Rick Tocchet do wrong to not still be coach of this team? I thought he was good.
Yeah, John, working backwards, I agree with you on Rick Tocchet, but we're seeing that more frequently, and I do believe this actually does dovetail. So we're talking about the coach, we're talking about Evander Kane, and I think these are two different sides of what I'll just call the Florida Panther effect. I think that franchises are a little quicker, and this is happening, I do think, across the NFL and the NHL, a little bit less Major League Baseball, but even the NBA. Coaches that have what we would consider as fans, and broadcasters, high levels of success, whatever's being discussed behind closed doors, they are not meeting what goals have been set. And I think that that executives and the higher up presidents, et cetera, are making choices a little more quickly these days, and that can be confusing to us. I don't think it was the right choice. I thought Tocchet deserved at least another year, but that could be a reflection of the room not coming together the way that the powers that be wanted to. So you get into new leadership. I think that you get some sandpaper with some skill with Kane, but you're absolutely right. That helps one of your rivals' cap situations. And I'm not sure that you're really getting the full package. I don't know how much elevation you will get out of Evander Kane. Yeah, he might put a couple more goals in for you. Maybe you win an extra game or two. Is that enough to put you over the line? Probably not.
And he's got to stay healthy as well. So there's a lot of things. And you said it exactly right. Again, it comes down to maybe some of these GMs ever trying to save their you-know-what as far as making some of these moves. But I think Vancouver, they probably should have been looking at a rebuild. We'll see what happens because I don't think they make it in a competitive Western Conference. I'll be quick here with Ottawa and Toronto. As Lars Eller and Nick Cousins head to the Senators on one-year deals, Claude Giroux is already 37. He stays. Jordan Spence in a trade with the LA Kings, among a bunch of other AHL depth and moves. Sens right up against the cap, couldn't do too much. Maple Leafs may have lost Mitch Marner, but they keep John Tavares. He had an excellent year. The 34-year-old, 75 games played, 38 goals, 36 assists, 74 points plus 10, was superb. He gets a 4-year, $17.52 million, 4.38. That is a little bit of a discount. But Matthew Nyes, he got his payday. The 22-year-old, still very young, 29 goals, 29 assists, 58 points plus 7, 6 years, $46.5 million at 7.75 per until 2031. But Cooper, he's the exact type of guy that Toronto's probably been wanting for ages because he gets to the front of the net, he's willing to get to the dirty areas, get deflections, knock people down, and score.
Yeah, and credit to just a tip of the cap to Matthew Nyes for making a big enough impact in just a couple of years to get $46.5 million over 6 years. That's a heck of a contract. That's what young players are looking for. When you know they can make a difference, they are going to get paid, and he will continue to make a difference. I like what you said, John. He can do a bit of everything. And what really is best for Toronto here is, I think, the dissolution of and I'm doing air quotes, the core four. I know it was a media draw. It was easy to talk about. It was time to move on. Everybody had seen it. And now they're going to have a chance to not fully reset, but just redefine who they are. And Nice is going to be a big part of that.
One last thing for me before we move to the Jets. Dakota Joshua, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points, minus 13 to 57 games. But the Dearborn, Michigan native a couple seasons ago was terrific. And I think he's going to fit right in, honestly. I know we talked about it a lot, even Ryan Reeves for prospect Henry Thun. They got something for Ryan Reeves. I think Brad Treliving's already doing a good job remaking this team. I already liked his work from before.
Yeah, Flames fans may raise an eyebrow, but because there were certain situations that led to the Panthers' success that they had, etc. But that's a very specific group, and I think that by and large, John, you're right on. Treliving, he was with the Flames for a number of years for a reason, cut his teeth there, and really made more positive impact than he did negative. And I think we're seeing the same trend with Toronto, and I think he will remain in his chair for a good amount of time, provided that Toronto still continues to make noise in the playoffs, and that has not always been easy for them, which we know.
So the Winnipeg Jets, they keep their guy, Gabe Vigliardi from the LA Kings to Winnipeg. That trade a couple of seasons ago, the rebuild on the fly. 25-year-old, pretty good. 27 goals, 34 assists, 61 points, plus 9, and a career time on ice high at 18.08 in 71 games. 6 years, $45 million, 7.5 per until 2031 as he avoids arbitration. They lock in depth defenseman Hayden Fleury, 2 years, 1.9 at $950K. Tanner Pearson, Walker Dewar as well. We'll see what Gustav Nyquist does at 35. He's still about 30 points of production on a 1-year, 3.25. Morgan Barron, same thing, positive plus-minus player. They still got $10 million in cap. A lot of good moves, but Cooper, this is where I have to stop with you because it's been a while since we worked together, and I really wanted to talk about this since it happened. The bonus structure of this contract is fascinating. Jonathan Toews, Manitoba native, returns home to play for the Jets. A guaranteed $550,000 bonus starting at 20 games played that goes up subsequent every 10 up to 60. And if the Jets make the playoffs and he suits up for 50 games, that's another $500,000. If he plays half the tilts the rest of the way, that's another $250 up to $750. And a $1 million bonus for winning the Cup, a possible $7.5 million in bonuses on top of his salary. I love the incentives there for Jonathan Toews. He wants to get back and kick some butt. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, and a credit here to whoever came up with that structure. That is that's certainly beyond our pay grade, John. We're both we're decently smart guys, but man, oh man, that is structured beautifully. I think both for team and player. Not only is it a great story just for Jonathan Toews as an individual, knowing the struggles that he has faced, but of course, when you get a hometown kid like that, I think that could be a little extra glue in the room. I know those things are tough to quantify, but I do want to bring them up because you know what? We look to the top of the mountain. We see the Florida Panthers back-to-back champions. Everyone knows, from hockey insiders to the casual fan, something special in the locker room there. And I think Winnipeg is going to get something that really no other franchise has right now with this kind of a story with Toews. And he's going to be rewarded if he's able to stay on the ice and produce. It's going to be exciting to watch either way, and I do hope the best for them.
Let's just say he ends up, getting another deal after this and want to continue to play. I know it's probably going to take at least a half of a season, maybe more, to get his feet wet underneath him. But also, as you mentioned with all the names, it's a Brad Marchand effect for Jonathan Toews.
Yeah, I think you're right. Marchand, in a way, we look at the ages for these guys. I think more so Marchand than Toews because Toews' situation is so unique. But when we were talking about Brad Marchand, I think almost a slightly elevated version of like a Tony Amonte type of projection,
sure,
right? Where you're still playing forward and still making a pretty decent impact, even to 40 and beyond. I think that's possible for both Marchand, certainly, because he has less of the kind of health and injury history. But if Toews can get his skating feet back underneath him, maybe some of that scoring touch back, you could see him really go on a nice run. Maybe there's a short contract and he ends his career with some potential real high notes with Winnipeg.
So one more before we jump into our favorite teams. The Edmonton Oilers had their offseason summed up not by the years of one-year extension for Kasperi Kapanen, Curtis Lazar, Noah Phillip, or Riley Stillman, or goaltender Matt Tompkins. The Oilers lock in Evan Bouchard. Again, not saying it's the wrong move. All 82 games played, 14 goals, 53 assists, 67 points plus 14. He's 25 years of age, 4 years, $42 million at 10.5 per. But it's a combined almost $20 million with Darnell Nurse and then adding in Andrew Mangiapane. Mangiapane goes from Washington now to Edmonton, 2 years, 3.6. He's going to be playing in that opener that the Flames and the Oilers have. That will be at Rogers. He's trying to get back to his 40-point offerings of the past. He had 28 points, 14 goals, 14 assists, and a plus 20. But really, you can talk about that before we stop. I just can't make heads or tails of the thought process for Trent Frederic. It's 8 years, $30.8 million for a third-line winger. The 27-year-old has played 4 seasons plus, about 378 career games, scored 15 goals in the last 2 seasons, 3.85 until 2035 is not a ton in a vacuum sense, but to a team that has just under $175,000 in cap space, I don't think that makes much sense. I know they had to get back Evan Bouchard in the mix, but when you're paying all that much money to Darnell Nurse and then Trent Frederic and you lost a lot of depth, I'm not necessarily sure that the Oilers are better.
Yeah, I don't think they're better, and I think at best, and again, we always say this, John, I think it's important to say it, I do try to put my bias aside here, so if I pretend I can't see the colors on the jersey, I don't care what sweater the team wears, forget the Flames, forget the Oilers, it's just a hockey team, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is kind of a neutral or lateral move at best. The only thing that makes sense to me here in terms of an explanation, maybe you're trying to get back some of what you lose with Evander Kane. Obviously, Evander Kane more dynamic than a Trent Frederic, plays higher up in the lineup than Trent Frederic. But that's really all that comes to mind. And it's not a one-for-one. It certainly isn't. And also, just before I switch off my mic, what a run for Andrew Mangiapane. It's going to be, first of all, so strange to see him playing for the Oilers. But man, oh man, plays with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, goes and plays with Alex Ovechkin. Now you're going to play with 2 more of the best players in the world in Draisaitl and McDavid. I think he will make an impact in Edmonton. And in that first game, John, I'm sure he'll have the classic chip on the old shoulder to get back at that franchise that let you go.
Yeah, whether or not we jump it from the first game or the very next night off the back-to-back against the Vancouver Canucks, you and I will be certainly ready to grit our teeth as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is where we pit stop on our favorite teams. We're going to discuss Seattle, Calgary, and Detroit here. So the Kraken section might be a little bit short. It might not be a little bit. I don't want to take away from the thoughts that Cooper had. But trades more than anything. It's Mason Marchment, the former star, goes to Seattle for a 4th-round pick that was already exercised in a 3rd-rounder in 2026. A 1-for-1 is Andre Burakovsky. It's unfortunate with all his injuries. Was moved to the Blackhawks for Joe Veleno. He got bought out. Freddie Gaudreau did sign for a 4th round that was used in the 2025 NHL entry draft. And Capo Caco, I want to make sure I stop here. He was excellent since the move from New York. 24 years of age. It's a 3-year deal. I don't think it's all that much. 4.525. It's 13.575 until 2028. In 49 games, 10 goals, 20 assists, 30 points, minus 11. But his production's pretty good, and they're definitely going to be happy to have him.
Yeah, I think a couple of important points here were, even if it's just anecdotal, I think that the fan base was a little bit nervous about whether or not Kakko was going to just honestly enjoy being in the Northwest after being in the American Northeast. The New York market, there's a lot of glitz and glamour there. Obviously, Seattle, a big market, but not the same kind of shine to it. But I think Kakko really settled in. I think he has shown that he enjoys the team. I think he knows that he has an opportunity to make a name for himself. And this is not a huge contract, but it's also not a prove-it contract, right?
Right.
I think it's a little bit of a bridge deal. I think if he continues to succeed and he wants to stick around, you could see another contract 3 years from now, obviously with a higher dollar amount. Maybe there's an A or even a C on his sweater. Not sure if he's that type of guy. But the fact that that's even possible is really good news for the Kraken.
Maybe in the swap for Burakovsky and Marchment, I put it this way. 22 goals, 25 assists, 47 points, plus 15. That Marchment can kind of bring that production that Burakovsky couldn't do just because he was injured. Again, the 61-point personal best for Andre was in a 2022 Stanley Cup campaign that Cooper and I called. And that's one of my favorite moments of all for broadcasting. The 24-year-old Ty Cartier, 2-year, $2.5 million extension. I'd love to see him build on his grit and sandpaper, a 20-plus points skater. But also I want to stop on this very quickly. What do you make of the 4-year, $4.5? That's $18 million for the 27-year-old Ryan Lindgren. If he gets to 5 goals and 20 points, that's a bonus. It's more about the defense, physicality, and building on a career. Plus 116. Again, what's realistic for Marchment, Lindgren, and then what do you make of Lane Lambert and company before I stop one more time?
Yeah, John, I'm going to focus a little bit. I'm going to keep a narrow scope on this, and I'm going to say, first of all, in the very positive department, and we don't have the numbers yet, don't have the performance yet to prove it. That's what we're going to try to find out as the season gets underway. But Marchment just feels like a great fit for the Kraken. I think that was maybe a surprise to some Kraken fans. I don't know if they thought they'd be able to land a name like that. And of course, hey, we're not talking about Connor McDavid, but I think Marchment could really grow his game alongside some of the skill that is still in Seattle and grow what he's known for. Maybe we see some record-setting point totals for him this year. That's at least in the cards. And for Lindgren, again, maybe I'm being a little too basic with this. We could have seen another reverberation of that Florida Panthers effect, right? We see players that bring you grit. It's still hockey. That's always been a factor. But I think there is a spotlight on that right now that you got to have one or two players in your lineup, that aren't just going to throw the gloves down like it's 2001 anymore, but that can really push back against other physical players on other teams and make some noise. That's a part of the game now, too. And the Panthers have shown basically the template for that.
Yes, they have. I'm going to stop here on a selfish question, but out over the recent years for the Kraken, Burakovsky, Brandon Tanev, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gord. You had Adam Larson last year, excellent on defense, plus 22. Brandon Montour, minus 22. He's much better than that, but here's my selfish question for Seattle. Can Matty Beniers, who's still just 22, played all 82 games, had 43 points, and was even, get closer to his Calder campaign in 22-23, where he had about 60 points and a plus 14? Because I'm looking at some of the stuff from the Hockey Guy here, Cooper, where I get a lot of those notes together. Top 10 breakout candidates were both listed as Matty Beniers and Shane Wright. And if they want to usher in the new era into Seattle and get back in the postseason, they really need Matty and Shane to go off.
Yeah, focusing just on Matty and John, we had the joy of being able to see him and be able to see him pop one when we were at Climate Pledge not all that long ago, although somehow it feels like 5 years ago, my friend. That's just time these days, I guess. What, are we getting older or something? Anyway, who's not getting that old is Matty Beniers. He's a young guy, and he's already done a fantastic job for the Kraken. I think that, yes, this last season was considered a quote-unquote down year. Easy math on this one, John, right? We're looking at 43 points versus 57 points during that Calder campaign. Mm-hmm. Let's meet in the middle. If you meet in the middle, but what's the median between those two? Exactly 50 points. I think that's a nice, reasonable goal for him this year. I think that his GM and his coach would certainly hope for more than that. But if you're below that threshold, I think that there might be some nerves jangling in Seattle. But I expect that he will eclipse 50, and he will have a bounce back here where we're seeing 60-plus total points for him.
And the thing for Matty that people got to keep in mind, and then I'll move to the Flames here, is that he plays in every single line, Cooper. He's expected to kind of do a little bit of everything. That's why they picked him number 2.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we certainly know, right? And Alex here as well. That's right. We know, everyone listening to this, if you're a hockey fan, it's not just about the numbers that you put on paper. There's so much more to the game, and Matty Beniers can do it all. I just happen to believe, maybe positively, I don't think it's pie in the sky. I think it's very realistic for him to get to that 50, 60 points and even beyond. And I think he's going to have a good number of helpers this year as well. Kakko around, Marchment around. I'm going to like to see how he fits in with those new names. Not that Kakko's a new name, but you know what I'm saying. How he fits in with that new look Kraken.
So, Cooper, I'm going to stop here on your team, and I didn't get a chance to work a duo game with you for a while, so when this actually happened during the season, we couldn't talk about it. So this will be the one time in the notes where I cheat on a previous selection. But Matthew Coronado, who's just 22, inks a 7-year extension, 45.5, 6.5 per until 2032. At 77 games played, 24 goals, 23 assists, 47 points, plus 6. Adam Klapka, 2 years, 1.5 until 2029. Again, he gets to stay until 2028 RFA rights. But I really liked in that open the Coronado move, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, I love that you started there, John. He has a nickname for a reason, Matty Scoronado, and that is what the team is going to need him to do. And he's going to be one of the primary names that's going to, that Craig Conroy is going to rely upon to sort of thread this needle. The Flames haven't really publicly, privately haven't said we're going to rebuild. What they want to do is retool, kind of that half measure, this sort of halfway point where we know significant changes are necessary, trying to make some moves, We've lost some big pieces over the past number of years, and are trying to kind of recover from that. And Matty Coronado is going to be a big piece of it. I think he projects to be a real big name for the Flames lineup for some years to come.
So as we press on here, I'm still waiting for Connor Zary to get that RFA deal signed. I'm very high on Zary. I think he could at least be a 40, 50 point guy when he's really on his game. Morgan Frost, 2 years, 4.3 until 2027. He can do the same. Kevin Ball is a defensive defenseman, and he got paid a pretty good number for him. 6 years, $32.1 million, 5.35 until 2031. Maybe a bit pricey, all things considered. 3 goals, 17 assists, 20 points, minus 6. But not really anything of significance locked up on that blue line besides Mackenzie Weegar. And Ball played well. He earns it. And your main man, Joel Hanley, shares that middle name. 34 years of age, 2 years, 1.75, gets a well-deserved deal. Poirier and Kuznetsov and forward Cairns also sign and bottom line roles. Maybe Justin Kirkland comes back in there, but some more deals to talk about.
Yeah, working backwards. Karen's kind of on a prove-it deal there. I think that he's going to be in camp and looking to try to sneak into the everyday roster. We'll see if that is possible. I like Poirier. I like Kuznetsov. I'm just going to skip over to Hanley as well. Yeah, good memory, John. Shares my middle name. I still might have to get myself a game-used jersey with Joel Hanley on the back. And I love that. I mean, listen, 1.755 per for just a couple of years. I think you're looking at a veteran defenseman who has settled in very nicely with the defensemen around him. I think he's been acknowledged for that, and I agree with you, Kevin Ball. I would have loved to see that per year, maybe right below 5 instead of 5.35. But I think for the same reason that Hanley gets a deal, Ball gets a deal, because he's settled in with guys like Anderson, with guys like Weegar, who's probably a future captain, and those guys are getting rewarded for it. And I think that Craig Conroy appreciates that. He remembers the rapport he had with his teammates way back when, 20 years ago, that 0-4 run, etc. Not that they're going to do that again this coming season, but having that connection with your teammates is worth something, and they're getting paid.
So I got a small point, and we can talk about something before I get into the bold prediction that I want to share. But Rasmus Anderson is an upcoming free agent. I say the 28-year-old 40-plus point D-man. He was a minus 38 last year. He could be a lot better. I think he's going to get moved at the deadline, maybe because of some of those moves you just talked about, the mix of Hanley and Kevin Ball and the like. Who knows? Just want to add that they still have about $15 million in cap space during the upcoming season, even with Kadri. I don't think Kadri's going to get moved, but Jonathan Huberdeau and Weegar. Future is solid. Wolf's a stud in net. Probably will see more as Sam Hanzik as well. I know the rebuild is progressing nicely. I know fans can get impatient, but the Flames are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, for what it is right now, I think that fans are doing at least a decent job, if not a great job, at tempering expectations. I don't think, like I just said, I don't think a cup run is in the cards. But, and it's tough to live in that mushy middle sometimes, right? Because if you don't make the playoffs, you don't win a playoff round, was it really worth it to then have kind of that mid-late round draft pick in the upcoming draft? Those are the questions that will be asked until the end of time. But I'm going to remain positive here. I think Conroy is the right leader, not only because of his history with the team, but he's already made some very shrewd deals. I love that he brought in the Frost and Farabees of the world. Frosty in particular has made an impact. We'll see if Farabee sticks around. I'm going to see how he performs early in the season as a forward. And you're right, John. It's as tough as it is to look at it in the face. It's Rasmus Anderson's probable last season or partial season with the Calgary Flames, and he has been a fantastic Calgary Flame. And if he moves on, I'll remember him fondly, as I have for many players. But it does scream a deadline move. He's a big name. I know he's going to be, unless the bottom falls out for some reason, which I don't predict, he will be desired by a number of teams. That right shot, scoring ability, speed, and defensive responsibility. He's got everything. He wants to go to Vegas. That's what we were talking about. Vegas still a destination, so we'll see if that ends up coming to pass.
So I got a bold prediction, and that might also come in line for Rasmus Anderson, and I'm going to make it right now. It is an OHL player on defense that just put up 96 points, 33 goals, 63 assists in 107-point campaigns. Same 33 goals, 74 assists, plus 81 in 2 seasons with the Saginaw Spirit, and still just 19 years old. Yes, I'm laying down the law here. Zane Parekh. I think he's going to be the truth. I think general manager Craig Conrad lets his star prospect begin opening night with the Flames. And if that happens, Cooper, I think he's going to stay with the big club all year, and playoffs could be a strong possibility. Yeah, there's a lot of moves that are still to be made in the cards that we were talking about, but I do think the Flames could be right there. But Zane Parekh, man, oh man, I like what he's got.
Mark John's words, listeners. Mark John's words. Once again, Hopkins and Ott are in lockstep. I agree with you, sir, and I think that is part of the reason that Rasmus Andersson will probably be wearing a new sweater after the deadline. Not that it's a one-for-one trade here, right? I mean, a guy that young for Parekh is not going to fully replace what Andersson brings to a team. However, look at the early part of the season leading up to a deadline and a potential move. You get Parekh actively learning from Andersson, Mackenzie Weegar, who, thinking about Michael Backlund, who is near the end of his career and is currently the captain seat for the Flames. Weegar, a potential future captain, if not a likely future captain. Those are the guys you're learning from. Even if Andersson moves on, you still get that real game experience. I think Conroy will want him to have that experience. Another reason why you'll see him in the lineup, working with the team every day, unless something really goes sideways in camp. Yep, ZP, Zane Parekh, will probably be on ice and a starter for the Flames very, very soon.
So I'm going to be quicker here with the Red Wings for the sake of time, and I also did talk about it in the State of the Union. So what's the latest? Still $12 million in cap space. Again, Sherratt, Hall, Gustafsson, all mid-30s from the blue line. Going to be departing next year. Maybe they can get a low price at the deadline, maybe not. Andrew Kopp, 5.63. JT Compher, 5.10 till 27 and 28. The cap hits are fine, but they need more scoring. If the Red Wings are going to make the playoffs, probably 10 point plus for each. What I'd like, RFA, still Jason Robertson. If Yzerman can work a sign and trade at some point, that's what I would like, because Jim Nill, the former Red Wings general manager, still needs the cap space. That's why Jimmy Benn had to take a $9 million pay cut just to stay, and Glenn Golickson's going to be their new bench boss. But for Detroit, they bring back some names. Showtime comes back. Patrick Kane, not all upset about that. 72 games played, 21 goals, 30 assists, 59 points, minus 16. JVR in a one-year deal, 36 points, minus 4. You take flyers on Jacob Bernard-Docker and Ian Mitchell on the blue line, and you cap dump Vlad Tarasenko. It doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot, because it really wasn't, but I wanted to make this stoppage here. Why overpay in this draft class when, admittedly, for the free agency, it does move the collective needle past Marner? And even for the Ducks, again, the Red Wings get John Gibson, and you go a couple of picks and Peter Mrazek on the other end. For John Gibson, his numbers, again, 506 career, 204, 217, 63 record, of 289 goals against, 910, 24 shutouts. I think is worth taking a shot on, because you think about it, the Red Wings lost Alex Lyon, so now it's Cam Talbot and John Gibson, and a lot of those numbers for John Gibson are around a Ducks team that wasn't very good. So I like that move for Yzerman, and I like the depth, but I think that's all it is right now.
Yeah, and John, I like JVR. I like that actually very much, maybe more than most. And give me Patty Kane with the Wings until the wheels fall off. I hope he, no pun intended. I understand it's the wing wheel, LOL. But I hope he wraps up his. I hope he has multiple more seasons of productivity in his career and ends his career as a wing. I think for a name like Patrick Kane to end with a storied franchise like Detroit, I think it only makes sense. Also in the Midwest, still has that right feel to me, as long as he can still be a contributor. And then, yeah, listen, you got a journeyman, a former Flame, and Cam Talbot. He's bounced around, but has been decently consistent. And then Gibson, let me ask you this, John, before we bounce forward. Do you think that Gibson comes into a Detroit team that is a little bit better than the Anaheim teams that he left? Or do you think it's a bit of an equivalent situation?
It's an equivalent situation, because the Red Wings' defense, I think, could be partially worse even still than Anaheim.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I thought you might go that way. I was, hey, maybe I'm just leaning positive today. Maybe it's because the sun's shining or something like that. But summertime, you know what it does. It puts a smile on your face. But either way, Gibson battle-tested. Yeah, listen, Anaheim hasn't been the greatest for a number of seasons here, but I think he'll be motivated. New sweater, new teammates, new situation. And I don't care how old you are, when you're that competitive, you're a skilled enough player to make it this long in the NHL. I think that he's not going to rest on his laurels. I think that despite the defense, you could see some better numbers from him this season.
So one last thing to have a back and forth, and then we'll go into the LA Kings. But Here's why I am with the Red Wings officially. I'm starting to place my expectations right now. This upcoming 25-26 season better be the last one under Eisman that has no playoff appearances. He's been here since 2019. Again, the first 3 seasons don't count when you have to clear up the nuclear wasteland that I've discussed a million times. So it's a functional year 4, but in reality, it's a year 7. That's why fans are getting impatient. You got a 2026 UFA class that includes Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov, Kyle Connor, Robo, and the like. Again, they probably all go back to their same teams, but if Stevie Y really wants to get fans excited and myself excited, go get me someone next year. Again, I love the Alex DeBrincat trade from a couple of seasons ago. I still do. I need some more voodoo. I need that trade. And the last thing for me, as stated earlier, Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, Montreal all made the playoffs in your division. They're all better than you. If Detroit wants to get in, stop losing 10 of the first 12 games in March and falling apart like a wet paper bag. You can blame Eisman for some substandard moves like Sherratt, Petrie, and Hall, but he never got the lottery luck. You can even blame him for Derek Lalonde, but the first rounders, Sider, Raymond, Axel Sandin Pellica, Marco Casper, he's hit on all of those. He's kept the pipeline stocked. I'm glad for that dearly. I do not miss Ken Holland in the slightest. But this better be the last year they don't make the playoffs, because I'm placing my expectations now. And if we go into the following year and they still don't make it, I'm going full nuclear, because I think it's fair to have expectations now. You got a pipeline, you got a team that's close, you got some good pieces in the top, you got some prospects. It's time.
Yeah, John, you're 100% right, and this is John Ott at his best, everybody. A little bit of spice right there in that little soapbox speech, and it's well deserved. I like it when you get up and you put things in bold and you put it in italics and you shout from the rooftops. I think that's needed. We got to rattle things a little bit here, and it can't just be, well, we're almost there next year. Well, we're almost there next year. Well, and next and next and next. It's got to change at some point. Again, the Flames have been in a similar, if not exactly the same position, where it's that middle ground. We're close. Maybe we get into the first round, or we're 2 spots away from the wild card. It's interchangeable scenarios, and I think you laid it out really well, John. And let me ask you one last question. If the Detroit Red Wings do miss the playoffs again this coming season, will that be 10 years in a row that the Red Wings have missed the playoffs?
Yeah, because it's 2016 since they last made it, yes.
Yeah, and that is more than reason enough for you, my friend, and every Red Wings fan to say it's time. That's a decade. It's a decade for the Red Wings of all franchises. I don't care. Red Wings got to be back in the playoffs for the NHL. Hey, Panthers are a great story, sure. Beat the Oilers, give me all those narratives, but I need the Red Wings back almost as bad as you do, my friend. I'm with you.
So LA, the Ken Holland experience, here we go again. Boy, oh boy, Ken Holland
Yes,
returns after a brief hiatus as the new GM of the LA Kings. Rob Blake is out, and the only reason Rob Blake is out, in my opinion, is because they couldn't beat the Edmonton Oilers. There were a lot of teams that couldn't beat the Edmonton Oilers. You had Jim Hiller didn't play bottom 6 lines, blow a 2-0 series lead. What does that leave you? Again, I like the Andrei Kuzmenko signing. I think he's going to find his home in LA. Cody Ceci, 4 years, $4.5 million for a 25-point guy. What the heck's he doing?
Oh, John, where to begin here? I mean, and I don't want to jump ahead. You've made some great notes. I knew we'd talk about Los Angeles, if only because, as you said, it is the Ken Holland experience. Even though I've got the proximity here in Los Angeles, I'm by no means a Kings fan, but just by being close by, I do pay a little bit more attention. I'm confused. We'll get into some more names here that are a little confusing. I don't think the team got better. I think that we have another, if there's a spectrum here, right, John? We were just talking about the Wings and the Flames, the Blues. We're talking about the Mammoth. Teams that are on the kind of back end of the spectrum of competitive franchises that want to make some noise in the playoffs, but maybe miss by a spot or two. Well, the Kings have been sort of the premier name in the other end of that spectrum of a little bit more shine, a little bit more success, a little bit more competitiveness against top teams. But boy, oh boy, do they lose every time in the first round. And that's almost as bad, if not worse, than just missing, dropping down. Not saying we have to tank, but just getting a higher draft pick and seeing if you can change the franchise. I don't know what's going on with CC, and I'll let you get into some of these other names here. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom, but a lot of question marks.
So I'll say this again: if you play spending spree in the first day of a free agency, I don't care what sports you are, and you try to declare yourself a winner, that means you're a loser. You don't want to spend the money just to spend the money. I'm not trying to say it to be mean, to be point blank, but that's not how it works. Brian Dumoulin, 33, 3 years of age, $12 million for 15 points per season. That seems like a lot. Joel Armia, 2.5, 20 plus points, which I like. But maybe Ken Holland thinks of it this way. Oh, geez, every single time Corey Perry goes to a team, they go to the Cup Finals. They don't need to sign him. I like that deal, though. I thought he was going to stay in Edmonton. 19 goals, 11 assists, 30 points, plus 12. But my question to you is this. We can talk about the moves again, but if Jim Hiller fails again, Ken Holland's not going to fire himself because he just got there. I think Hiller is going to be, might be packing his bags.
You nailed it, John. A little bit ago, we talked about how quickly coaches are jettisoned if things don't go right, and you got it. Ken Holland just stepped in. Hiller would be, kind of fodder for a big fire, and I think that the Kings are almost staring into a little bit of a pit of abyss, and maybe they're a couple years. I want to hear what you think about this. I know we have to move on. I think the Kings are a bit of a case study, not all that different than the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have a couple of guys who are probably getting statues outside of Crypto.com Arena in Kopitar and Doughty.
Right.
They are nearing the end of their runs, not only just with the franchise, but in hockey in general as active NHL players. And I just don't think that anyone in the franchise knows what to do about it. Those are only two players. I understand we're not talking about every player on your forward lines or every blue liner on your pairings and every goaltender, but they're so singular. It makes me think of Gino, makes me think of Crosby. The Penguins have seen the wheels start to fall off here. The Kings have been trying to keep those wheels on.
Right.
Some of these moves tell me that the general manager, the president, the folks that are in charge feel those bolts rattling on those wheels.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with you completely because when you have guys like Kopitar and Doughty, they can't play forever. Again, they were probably hoping Jonathan Quick can continue to stick around. Andre Kopitar has been unbelievable. He's been like Patrice Bergeron on the opposite side of the conference, but it doesn't last forever.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and and I don't want to end their careers prematurely. I think that there's still some tread on the tires to keep that wheels analogy going. You got me thinking Red Wings now. I can't get away from the wheels, but I do think the Kings are going to be in a tough spot here if they don't capitalize on what seems to be the end of a major era. Because we're looking back now more than 10 years, John. We were talking about 10 years of no playoffs for the Wings. Well, the Kings have high expectations as well. That last cup came in 2014. And the team looked very, very different then. I just don't know if the answers are there for Ken Holland and company.
So let's go to the Ducks because this trade shocked me a little bit. I know it's probably something that's been talked about for a while, but former NHL 23 cover athlete Trevor Zegras in exchange for forward Ryan Poehling in a second round that was used in the draft in a fourth and 26. You look about those numbers between Poehling and Zegras that play in the same position at C, around 30 points per season, but Zegras goes to Philadelphia. For the Ducks, they're also trying to make some other moves because their big free agency was part of the Finnish Mafia for Dallas. It's Mikael Grenland, 60-point marker 5 times, twice in a row with the Sharks and the Stars. He says his best years are ahead of him. You got Granlund, you got Chris Kreider, comes over from the trade. Alex Killorn still signed from a couple of seasons ago since we last did this. Jacob Trouba is going to be a UFA at 8 per. Racco Gudis, the same thing. Pat Verbeek is trying to get all this stuff in order. They still got to sign Mason McTavish, who's a current RFA and point leader who's still just in between 22 years of age, and alongside Troy Terry. You got Gauthier, Carlson, Mitch Dukov, Zellweger. They're a good team, but Trevor Zegras, he goes to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, it was time, John. I think you and I both saw this. I think a number of folks in the hockey world saw this. I think Zegras still has a ton of potential, and maybe. Now, this might be too high of a projection, especially given what Sam Bennett just accomplished, right? I'm not making a comparison to the Sam Bennett of now, and they're different players slightly, but I'm making at least an indirect comparison to the Sam Bennett that left the Calgary Flames. That was a younger player who still hadn't really reached his full potential. I think over the past 2 seasons, certainly during his time in Florida, Sam Bennett has grown into his potential and may even still surpass that and grow further. Not saying Zegras, is going to be lifting the kind of trophies that Sam Bennett just did a couple of months ago, but I think that in a complete change, right? All that's the same is similar colors, right? You got some orange in Anaheim, you got some orange with the Flyers. Otherwise, different coast, different coaching style, different teammates. Maybe this is exactly what he needs. Is it the right franchise? To be determined, but I think that it's more positive than not, probably for both sides.
One last thing for me before we go to the Bruins. Lucas Dolstall, their goaltender, gets locked up. 54 games played for the 25-year-old. 23, 23, and 7, 310, 903, and 1 shutout. It's a 5-year deal, $6.5 to $32.5 million between the pipes. I like what's going on in Anaheim. They still got some work to do. They still have over $22 million in cap space as that rebuild continues. I'm not saying Lucas Dolstall could be J.S. Jaguar, but do you think he can be a franchise netminder?
I actually do, and a number of these moves in general I really like. I actually like, even though it seems maybe it's a little silly, I really like Gudas at Granlund especially. I think that he's going to be a big name for Anaheim. Kreider can be a leader in the room as well. And yeah, I think that it's a positive trajectory in the blue paint as well. And it just feels like, John, when you look at everything from kind of the 10,000-foot bird's eye view, it just feels, maybe it's just sort of the timeline that we expect for an NHL franchise, but these moves help lock it in for me. It feels like the Ducks are really starting to turn a corner. Now they just got to prove it as it comes out into the season.
Turning a corner, still trying to rebuild. I'm still trying to figure all that out with Don Sweeney and the Boston Bruins. They get Victor Arvidsson from the Oilers for a 5th-round pick in a trade. They extend Morgan Geekie. I like that one. 6 years, $33 million, 5.5 till 2031. It's 57 points and a +3 in 77 games. Sean Corrali at 1.85. Michael Esamont from the Bolts to the Bruins at 1.45 for 2 years. You remember this show when we first started Free Agency Frenzy several years ago, and Tanner Janot and that big price that Tampa had to pay? Again, Boston didn't have to pay that, but they did give him a 5-year, $17 million, 3.4 for a guy that averages less than 15 points in a season because of all the injuries. I don't know if the 24-goal season from 21-22 is a flash in the pan, but if I have to guess, it probably is.
Yeah, I think so. I would lean that way as well. And, just kind of from a narrative standpoint here, John, the teams wearing black and yellow in the Northeast, in Boston and Pittsburgh, their trajectory is moving in a direction that is not all that palatable for their fan bases. And it seems like a pretty much official changing of the guard at this point. I'm not saying that the Bruins can't bounce back and sneak their way into the playoffs, but it's not the type of expectations that maybe 4 or 5 years ago would have been acceptable. We're looking at those Florida teams. I know that Tampa's been down a little bit from their high point, but the power seems to have moved south on the East Coast into Carolina to Florida. Tampa still making noise as well, and the Boston Bruins and those Penguins that we've mentioned a couple times just sliding back a little bit.
If you want to talk about exactly, and a good segue from Cooper here, what Boston needs to get back in the playoffs, I think it's pretty simple here. Plus, minus, Nikita Zadorov, again, who I absolutely love, and Cooper still does as well, I imagine. 81 games played, 4-18-22. He was a team-leading plus 25 for a record of the Bruins that were 33, 39, and 10. They had the 5th worst record, tied with Philadelphia, Seattle. Only Nashville, Chicago, and San Jose was worse. Mason Lohrei, he did have 33 points, but he was a minus 43. So they need health for Charlie McAvoy on defense and Jeremy Swayman to play like a Vezina candidate, or I don't see much for Boston.
Yeah, absolutely right. And yes, of course, unless he becomes, unless he goes crazy or something, Zadorov will always have a fan in me. And I also like not just because he was with the Kraken, but Morgan Geekie. I think that extension is a smart one. I think that he's a solid player. So listen, it's not all negative, not by a long shot, but even making the moves that Cam Neely and company have, I'm a little dubious. I don't think that we're looking at a playoff run here for the Bruins, and I'm not sure really what that means, John. We're going to have to pay close attention as the season gets going and see if there's any potential for them to right this ship before having to go into full rebuild mode.
Yeah, they would have to do it quickly. We're talking about October, November, between American Thanksgiving, if they want to set their sights on their season, and I mean that wholeheartedly. For the Sabres here and Kevin Adams, it's Jack Quinn, It's 3.375 for the 23-year-old, 39 points last season, not too bad. Justin Danforth at 3.6 for former CBJ man. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi. You add to that tandem and Alex Lyon to try to play that backup role if Devin Levi isn't ready yet. Again, Ryan McLeod, 79 games played, 20 goals, 33 assists, 53 points, plus 19 is staying put. 4 years, $20 million. The rumor was Bowen Byram was not going to sign unless he got a big deal. Well, they had to go to arbitration to keep him, but they do. But who knows what that means in the future after it's done. 2 years, 6.25 per, 12.5 on the blue line currently. It's Dahlin, Samuelson, Power, Michael Kesselring, and Connor Timmins. The blue line's good, but the Buffalo Sabres need to score some goals. And just like when you talk about the Red Wings and about needing to get things going, when is this never-ending rebuild going to end?
Man, that is probably the number one question when we're talking about teams that are outside of the playoff picture looking to get themselves back in. Maybe it's related to the fact that geographically Buffalo is one of the furthest teams from where I am. But you know what? San Jose is in the same state where I reside right now. And I'm not saying that things have been as bleak for the Sabres as they have been for the Sharks recently. But those two franchises, they almost look like mirrors of each other in a way where they've kind of disappeared from at least my consciousness and sort of the collective NHL consciousness. They're teams that are just trying to figure it out and kind of can't seem to. So I don't really even know. The Sabres are the biggest mystery to me. And not in the sense that, oh, they might have a chance to make the playoffs or they won't. I'm just going to assume that they won't make the playoffs, not be able to make the right moves to do so. And I'm not sure what to say beyond that. We just have to see them prove something other than what they have shown us over the past half decade or so.
Yeah, it's been a rebuild challenge in NHL games for years to come and remains to be so, and that's the disappointing part if you're a fan of that franchise. For the Chicago Blackhawks, we don't have to spend a whole ton of time here, Cooper, but I did want to stop for the former Kraken man. I'm just happy for Ryan Donato that he's happy where he is. 4 years, $16 million extension, 31 goals, 31 assists, 62 points. That's first-line production. Only 5 points less than Connor Bedard, and Donato wants to stay.
Yeah, I really like it, and who can blame him? You know, there's another scenario there where the Blackhawks have been in a down period. Some of the most storied franchises in the NHL just fighting through this murky time, and it's certainly been the case. And look, Bedard can't be the, and I emphasize underscore, the savior. He will be a generational talent. I think he's still growing into that role, which is only fair and understandable. But playing with somebody like Donato, who's got a lot of skill and clearly wants to be a Chicago Blackhawk, I think that matters. We've talked about the feeling in the room a lot. I think Donato's going to bring a lot to that and hopefully helps make a continued positive effect there in Chicago.
So Bedard, Artem Levchinov, Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar, Sam Rinzel, Kevin Korchinski, Lucas Reichel. We're talking about guys between 19, 23 years of age, and still Spencer Knight at 24, and also Rick Boll and Darren Pang as play-by-play in color. It should be pretty good. I still miss Rick Boll in Calgary. I know you do here, Cooper. So I think that team's going to be good in the future, but they still need a couple more seasons.
Yeah, I think you're right, and tip the cap to you now, sir, for many reasons. But for the Rick Ball shout-out, yeah, he's a very talented broadcaster, and it was tough to lose him in Calgary. But hey, I can understand why you want to be in a market like Chicago, and I hope, to a lesser degree than I do so for the Red Wings, I hope that the Blackhawks continue to take steps because it's always exciting to see that logo, to see that sweater making noise and taking on opponents in the playoffs.
So here's what we knew. The Colorado Avalanche needed cap space. Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood, after the deals were shortly signed from the deadline, they're gone for Gavin Brindley, who was a stud at U of M on the forward side. So I like that move for Colorado. Sam Malinsky comes back. You get Parker Kelly, depth. 4 years, $5.6 million, 1.4 per. Not a lot of money there. You knew they didn't have a lot of it, but Brent Burns is coming to play for the Colorado Avalanche. I forget he's 40 years of age, but it's 1 year, $1 million. It's still 29 points and a +7. It's Brent Burns and Josh Manson back on the blue line for the Avs.
I mean, are we going to have a Ray Bork scenario here, John? Are we going for maybe one or two last rodeos for Brent Burns? I mean, I kind of like it. I think it's sort of a return to the West Coast for him. I mean, he seemed to fit in decently well with the Hurricanes,
yeah.
But something about it. Listen, it will be a little strange to see him in those colors, knowing all the years that he took on the Avalanche as a rival. But I like it. Again, I mean, look, I keep hitting this button, but I think it's fitting. There's another glue guy, somebody who's great in that locker room, and is getting. Look, you already have Makar, we have McKinnon. We could go on and on about them. We don't need to. They are transcendent players, and Brent Burns knows how to hang with guys like that. He has played with some of the greats. He is one of the greats himself, regardless of the fact that he's getting long in the tooth, and he doesn't have that many teeth, so the long in the however many teeth are left. But I like it, and I hope, John, you and I always have an interesting call whenever the Colorado Avalanche are on that screen. I hope they have another season that's worth some exciting calls, and they have yet to prove otherwise, especially when you got McKinnon and Makar and some of the pieces around them. It should be another solid season for the Avs, if not to the level that they were when they were playing for Stanley Cups.
So the Columbus Blue Jackets, nothing major, but the moves that they made were really good ones. Dmitry Voronkov, forward, 4.175 for the 24-year-old until 2028. 73 games played, 47 points, plus 17. And Ivan Provorov, who they like from the move from Philadelphia, they keep him. All 82 games played for the defenseman, 33 points, plus 11 on a 7-year, $59.5 million deal. That's $8.5 until 2032. So they got their guys. They like them. They still have $16 million on cap space. But I did want to stop on this. Cooper, I don't know if you saw this, but it pretty much melted my heart when you think about Johnny and Meredith's daughter, Noah. Did you see when Meredith was at the top of the draft board and Noah was able to watch alongside her mother and announce Jackson Smith and the Go Mommy Go? Honestly, I cried.
Yeah, you're not alone, my friend. And even just thinking about it right now, I can feel the emotions. And it's still so surreal that happened with Johnny and his brother, who are no longer here, taken far, far, far too soon. But the poise that Meredith has shown, their entire family, his parents, it's been nothing short of remarkable. And the fact that, their daughter is able to recognize mommy and celebrate her, who she will now represent Johnny and her brother-in-law for the rest of her days. And I will forever respect the Columbus Blue Jackets, not only because he chose them after being a Calgary Flame for almost a decade, but they have done a remarkable job themselves in honoring them. So that was a huge moment, and I will continue to wish them success, and I think they are headed in the right direction as a team.
Absolutely, and then with Meredith and Sean Monahan and the Masterson Trophy, I know Alec talked about that previously when we were all in there, but I wanted to throw that in the notes as well. I wish Columbus lots of success, and I think they could be a playoff team this year. For the Minnesota Wild, other than the Vlad Tarasenko dump, there wasn't much to do. Again, Marcus Johansson, they had depth for Nico Kubel and Tyler Pitlick. But I do want to stop here. We didn't really get a chance to talk about them a lot during the year because they just weren't very good. In a world where it's Steven Stamkos, former 60-goal scorer, had 53 points, minus 36, still due $8 million per till 2028. Jonathan Marchessault, former 60-point guy, 56 points, minus 29, 5.5 till 2029. Brady Shea, the 31-year-old defenseman, he's due $7 million until 2031. 33 points, minus 24. But you add Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, and you're so much worse. And then you say Saros, 20, 31, and 6, 298, 895, 4 shutouts. He's due 7.74 until 2030. Yes, I know about the prospect pool and Matthew Wood, Reed Schaefer, David Enstrom. They like a lot of those guys. I will speed through that as far as our timeliness, but they feel pretty good about them. You got Michael Bunting, Roman Josi, Nick Hague, Nick Perbix, but really, Cooper, it all comes down to that trifecta that they signed last year. They need the whole team to be better, but they got to get Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea and Saros in net to get things fixed because that fell completely off the rails. This was supposed to be a lock playoff team, and they just fell hard.
Yeah, and what a bitter pill to swallow for that fan base. We've seen how jazzed that fan base gets when the Predators make noise in the playoffs, and they did the opposite of that. I mean, I cannot really remember a team falling so far off the radar of competitiveness than the Predators of last season. It was stunning to watch that descent, and all the names, all the everything you just listed, John. I think that's too much to ask. Even if you get some returns to form for a couple of those players, is it likely that all of them just sort of magically return to their best abilities and their best performances? I don't think that's a sensible thing to expect. So I don't know what the Predators can reasonably do. I'm not sure if I were a GM. I mean, my jaw would be on the floor.
Right.
There's not a lot of explanation other than just some intense bad luck. So will it get worse than it did last year? I doubt it. But will it get a ton better? Also, probably not.
It's a 35, 34, and 31-year-old collective in those three signings. And from what we talked about, again, those are all in the notes. You can look those up when this gets posted. Cooper and I are talking about for the Nashville Predators to make the playoffs from last year, they would have to make up 30 points and get 15 extra wins in the standings alone. That's just not possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe you're looking at 5 to 7 additional wins, and then you're just talking about shifting your draft pick. I mean, that's really the only discussion. And you're not even shifting it in a good direction.
No.
So those fans are going to have to steel themselves here. I mean, I'm not sure what I would do if I were a fan of the Predators. That is such a steep fall. They got a long way to climb, and it was almost out of the blue. It's intense stuff.
So New York, we're going to stop on those teams that are close in tenure. The New Jersey Devils, injuries to Jonas Siegenthaler or Dougie Hamilton, Luke and Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, when they were playing against the Carolina Hurricanes, they really had no chance because of all those injuries. But they do get Connor Brown from Edmonton, 30 points for the 31-year-old's got a ton of speed, +9. I like that one. 4-year, $12 million. And they take a flyer on Evgeny Dadonov. Never too bad on a 1-year, $1 million when he's got 20 goals, 20 assists, and 40 points. So good depth there. Jake Allen, their backup netminder at 34. I know he's getting long in the tooth. 5 years, $9 million, but it's still just 1.8 per for a 906 save percentage, 4 shutouts, and a 266. Cody Glass, the former first-round pick for the Vegas Golden Knights, the first ever. Again, only played 14 games, 7 points, +4. He gets an extension. I don't know if Nico Dawes is going to be ready, but really all New Jersey really needs, Cooper, is health.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can't have that list it's multiple lines on a page of your notes,
yeah.
John. It's talk about intensity. We were just talking about the Predators with an intense downfall. That's an intense amount of injuries. And, if we're at or near full health for guys like Dougie Hamilton, who I still love, again, former Flame, thumbs up to him, the Hughes, of course, Hischier, Jesper, I mean, we're talking really significant players, not just on the Devils, but in the NHL. I mean, those are players that any franchise would love to have. Got to have health there. And, hey, I'm taking Jake Allen at those numbers any day. Yeah, he's 34. He's nearing the end of his career, but I love his experience. Markstrom, another former Flame, I'm not sure you noted that he's a free agent next season. I think that's probably going to be it, meaning this upcoming season for his time with the Devils, and then he might bounce around before he calls it a career. But I think if he can play, at 80% of his maximum, just in terms of skill potential, that can bode well for the Devils, who, like you said, never going to make a long playoff run given all the circumstances. If they get some things to go in their favor, John, you can see them win a couple rounds.
Right. And for the New York Islanders, who knows what's in the cards for them? They're usually close. They did lock up defenseman Alexander Romanov, 20 points +5, 8-year deal, $50 million. He's a defenseman at heart at 6.25 until 2033. A combined 21.75 in Pollock and Mayfield. Pollock, Pellick, Mayfield, a group already in their 30s. It's a veteran laden, and they add more to it. Jonathan Drouin, 30-year-old forward, 2 years, $8 million, 37 points in 43 games with the Avs last year. Can probably get close to that again. New York Islanders, another one of those teams that need goals in a season. With Bo Horvat, it was 28, 29, 57, -4. He could be a little bit better as well. But the main thing for me, and I know this is easy to say, but I got to punch this button. Ilya Sorokin's one of the best goaltenders in the world. 61 games played, 30, 24, and 6, 271, 907, 4 shutouts. He needs a break. And Cooper, I know the days of old of Dominic Hasek, Patrick Waugh, Marty Brodeur, franchise stalwarts in that play almost every single night probably don't come to pass anymore. But his cap hit still 8.25 until 2032. Whether it's Semyon Varlamov or now David Riddick, he really needs a backup. He needs some rest.
Yeah, he certainly does. And I think you could flip a coin between Varlamov and Riddick. I think either of them are certainly passable goaltenders, but they are not going to really hold a candle to what your starter does. And, I think the Islanders need some help as well. I think realistically for the Islanders, first of all, I absolutely love their young draft picks that came in, and I think similar to the Canadiens, I think the Islanders are maybe just a touch ahead of where the Canadiens are. I think the Islanders a couple years from now, very good team. They're decent now, don't get me wrong, but I think you could see them really make an impact as those draft picks start to get their legs underneath them and potentially get into that lineup.
So former LA Kings defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov from the moves that the Rangers have made for Keandre Miller and Trouba, 30 points plus 26. He gets a 7x7, 7-49 until 2032. Will Cooley had a fantastic year for the bottom six, and he got paid for it as he should have. All 82 games played, 20 goals, 25 assists, 45 points plus 12 for a team that was so topsy-turvy because of Chris Drury. 2 years, 7.8. Cooper, 6 points separated the Rangers, 9 for the Islanders. As far as making the playoffs, they still got Igor Shesterkin, but between the Rangers and the Islanders, can one of these teams battle for a spot, or does New Jersey pretty much take that possibility and knock it out of the park?
I think I'm going to lean toward the latter, John. I'm going to say if, like we said, if New Jersey gets the luck to kind of shift to the opposite side of the scale where it was last year, not saying everything needs to be perfect, but I think if they even have some decent luck, you're looking at the Devils probably really doing what the Rangers and Islanders are hoping to be able to do. Also, just flashing back to the Islanders really quickly, need to have a kind of return to form for Matt Barzal, a one-time Seattle Thunderbird who's probably going to spend his career on the island. And I do think that they will find themselves, really winning playoff rounds here in the next small handful of years. But for right now, it seems like the New Jersey Devils are that team.
So, Cooper, as we get set in the home stretch, admittedly, we're 10 minutes away from the hour and a half. You think you're still good here on time?
Thumbs up, my friend. I like it. We're rolling.
All right, so as we go across in this home stretch, the Philadelphia Flyers, prospect Tyson Forrester, he gets 2 years, 7.5. Noah Cates, the same thing as they try to build, 37 points plus 3. Cam York, 17 points, 5.15, 25.75 million for 5 years. Christian Dvorak. A couple of former Flames also head to Philly after that Zegers trade. Defenseman Dennis Gilbert, 1 year, 87,000, and Dan Vladar is going to play in the backup role, 27 years of age. Maybe he might start considering what happens with Sam Ersson, but 3.35, 2 years, 6.7 million. Dan Vladar was not bad last year in 30 games, 12, 11, and 6, 280 goals against, 898 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. What do you think of Dan Vladar's new home?
Well, you know what? I wish him the best, and that's almost always the case when Flames move on. He was a really great member of that roster in Calgary, and I think I respect the fact that he wanted to find a new home, and I think that management wanted to do right by him as well, because he did serve the team admirably, and there were moments, John, we were covering some of those games. He looked like a guy that can be a top goaltender for one of the franchises in the National Hockey League. Maybe Philly gives him that chance, and I do mean literally, where they say, all right, Dan, can you take this? Can you grab this spot? I think the Flames, prior to Dustin Wolf's ascendance to being a very, what seems to be, as I knock on wood, a very special goaltender for potentially a long time, I think that Craig Conroy and company were hoping that Vladar might get a little vice grip on that top spot. Will he be able to do that in Philly? All I'm going to say, I can't commit to it. I'm going to say I hope so. If nothing else, I think he's going to be a nice fit on the roster.
Yeah, they're going to continue to build their space and try to work toward the playoffs in several years, but not right now. They got time to work with. Pittsburgh Penguins and GM Kyle Dubas had mixing deals from 1 to 2 years. I'm not going to give you the numbers because there's too many of them. Anthony Mantha, the former Red Wing and Flame, he's mixed all over the 30 years of age. 2.5 million is the biggest in the 1 year. Justin Brazo at 27, Connor Dewar and Raphael Harvey-Pinard are 26, Philip Tomasino 23, Ben Kindle signs his entry-level deal at 18. You got defenseman Alex Alexeyev at 25 years of age, Philip Kemp 26, Parker Wotherspoon 27, Caleb Jones 28. They took the contract of defenseman Matt Dumba from the Dallas Stars and got a 2028 second-round pick in return. And hopefully I say this correctly, Vladislav Kolyachonyuk, the 24 defenseman, years of age, it's 4, 10, and 14 minus 7, is now a member of the Stars. The Penguins still have $29 million in cap space opened up next year alone. And if nothing is done for him right now, Cooper and Alec, here's the big point. That's $45 million according to Puckpedia. Malkin, 39. He's probably entering his retirement. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but that 2026 draft class of McDavid, Eichel, and Makar in free agency, that could be open to Pittsburgh should they elect to back up the Brinks truck.
Yeah, John, this is one thing that we haven't said explicitly. I think one of the biggest pieces of news, and I doubt you would disagree, is a piece of news that hasn't happened yet. It's basically the silence from Camp Connor McDavid.
Right.
Will he re-up with the Edmonton Oilers? Will he opt to find a new home? And I like that you're making this suggestion. This is why you always bring us some hot takes, my friend. It's what you do best. And for whatever reason, I'm not trying to push back against it outright, I cannot see McDavid and Crosby for some reason. Even though they play together, internationally and have played together before, I cannot see them on the same NHL franchise. If only because it's like having two suns next to the earth. It's almost like it's too much energy. It's too much gravity. There's too much physics happening. There's too much chemistry. It's just almost too much. And I think both of those players sort of deserve to be the center of the solar system, so to speak. Maybe if we see kind of either a joint or a back-to-back season retirement scenario where Gino retires, then maybe Crosby hangs it up. Even if he's still got some left in the tank, I could see him not wanting to fade out too much as he ages further. But yeah, John, I love that you make that a possibility, because Pittsburgh is a storied franchise, and to sort of take it over from Sid the Kid for McDavid, who's going to kind of enter the second half of his career and potentially make an even bigger impact than he has on Edmonton. That's kind of the level of almost a Gretzky trade. We're talking huge stuff in NHL history.
And we talk about Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. Why not Connor McDavid and Cale Makar?
100%, sir. I mean, by the way, if that happens, John, I'm going to make you buy a lottery ticket. That would be insane.
And I know Alec would be supremely happy alongside of it. So the San Jose Sharks get goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic for a third round from Pittsburgh. They mix in alongside for William Eklund, good young player, 58 points, -7 for the 22-year-old. It's only 5 points off the pace with Macklin Celebrini, 5.6 per. So $16.8 million, that's what it's worth. Adam Gaudette, Philip Kurashev, Jeff Skinner, and my goodness, how does John Klingberg keep getting paid? 32 years of age, $4 million, but Dmitry Orlov, the same thing. He's also a member of the Shark, and I think for Klingberg and Orlov especially, that also is moves for the San Jose Brass, that they could move them on the deadline. And as it is still under $21 million in cap space for the Sharks as they continue to rebuild.
Yeah, and I think this, and I also love too, hey, you're talking about guys getting paid. Jeff Skinner gets a few bucks as well.
Yeah.
3 million. And I think he's deserving of that money. I actually really like him potentially on the Sharks, and I hope he finds his way into some goals and assists this year. And it's really going to be that continued story of Celebrini coming into his own. It's kind of Connor Bedard West, keeping an eye on his growth, his development as a young player, and he's going to lead the way for a long time for the Sharks. So that's what they're looking at. They're just trying to surround him with the best group that they can.
So just 3 teams left here. We'll breeze through this. The St. Louis Blues, they had that magical run against the Winnipeg Jets to the limit. That game 7 loss definitely hurt. But Jim Montgomery and the Blues, they certainly seem to have found something. Colton Parayko was a big part of that. 36 points plus 12. They get Pius Suter, former Red Wing and Canuck, 46 points plus 2 years, 8.25. I don't mind it. I think he's pretty good. Nick Bukestad goes from Utah to St. Louis, 66 games played, 19 points -2. Joe Hofer, they said that they were going to make sure that no one else signs those offer sheets. The backup goaltender alongside Bennington stays 2 years, 3.4 per, 31 games played, 16-8-3, 264, 904, and a shutout. We'll see if they can take that next step. Again, they beat out the Flames in the postseason. That's not to hammer the stake in the nails for Cooper, but it was that series in mid-January that was kind of the set of the reason. And they did push the Jets. They gave them a scare because they just couldn't win any games on the road.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I mean, I think I got hit with the obvious branch of the tree here, but I think that the St. Louis Blues are going to go as Binnington goes in a lot of ways. I mean, I like their lineup as well and did last year. I don't think we'll see a very different performance this year. I'm sort of expecting more of the same. I don't feel like they're one of the teams in the West that are going to make some huge jump or win the division, but you could see them in one of those wild card spots again. And as we remember, might not be the same way that it plays out this year, but I think that they and the Flames will be in similar spots, if not both out, maybe one or two spots behind the wild card. Maybe things shake out in such a way they both end up in the wild cards. I mean, there's a lot of potential here, but I'm not expecting the Blues to be a top team by any stretch of the imagination.
So the Bolts got smoked by their brothers in Sunrise, but we saw that Tampa Bay rebounded to be a regular season powerhouse. They're tight on cap space, but I still like their moves. Gage Consalvis, 2 years, $2.4 million, 20 points, +7 for the 24-year-old. Pontus Holmberg goes from Toronto to Tampa, 19 points, +4. And Jacob Peltier, who I'm really excited and hope that he gets a fresh start, 3 years, $775,000 in his career, 86 games, played with 11 goals, 18 assists, 29 points, and a +3. But I like this team, and I like that Florida is also really locked in terms of that state and good hockey. Ryan McDonough, $6.75 million. I'm looking at that contract maybe to expire soon. But Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde also reunite as Bjorkstrand signs at 30 at $5.4 million. With still $12 million in cap space, it's going to get set to open up next season for the Bolts.
Yeah, and maybe I'm playing it safe here and kind of continuing my mindset that I did with the Blues, but I'm expecting a kind of similar season for Tampa Bay in a good way. I think you pointed out some great names right there in Bjorkstrand and McDonough. And, hey, Yanni Gourde, having him on the Kraken as kind of a secondary favorite team of mine, absolutely loved him in Seattle. And he goes about as many miles as you can by air, all the way back down to Florida, going diagonally across the country, back to where he had a ton of success. He's got his name on the Stanley Cup. And I think he's going to be a reason that Tampa Bay could get even closer to doing that again. I'm not sure they'll find themselves better than some of their Eastern Conference rivals, including the Panthers. But I think they might take just half a step back toward the glory days. And you know what? You mentioned Peltier. You know me, I'll take an opportunity. We even had a name earlier in Walker Duehr. We're seeing some of those younger players that didn't really fully find their footing with Calgary. I think in really potentially excellent opportunities for themselves and their teams. And hey, we know that Peltier was good friends with Jonathan Huberdeau, and I think Peltier might end up doing better than people expect. He's maybe not just an extra piece, but could be a solid piece for the Lightning.
Absolutely. One last team, Martin Ferraveri, the Washington Capitals. They like what they had. The 25 years of age defenseman, 7 years, $42 million. It's a pretty good contract, $6 million per till 2033, 25 points +18. Anthony Beauvillier goes from the Islanders to the Caps. That is a 2.75 per for 25 points and a +2. They had an excellent regular season, but as we saw, Cooper, that might be the Caps ceiling.
Yeah, John, and I think this is not necessarily the right label, but hey, we're doing, this is media, this is broadcast. We're going to label it. We're going to label it. They are 1/3 of the old guard right now until proven otherwise. And who are the other two? We've already talked about in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, Alec. I'm sorry. And Boston. And the Capitals, I think, kind of joined that group of teams from over the last 12, 10, 8, 7 years that have had a ton of success, won some cups. Really enjoyed a great run. I'm not saying that, like you, John, said something about that wet paper bag falling apart. We're not there yet, in large part because there's still a ton of talent on these teams, but we're just looking at that trajectory, and I think there's enough evidence now to say Capitals are still going to be right around it in the East, but you might see them look a little bit more like the Blues do in the West, maybe a step above that, but probably not making a run to the Cup final.
So as per tradition, we're going to take one team from each conference that didn't make the playoffs that will get in and one that will fall out. Then I have an exciting announcement to share with Cooper, and I can't wait to hear his reaction to it. So here we go. Per tradition, we will start in the Eastern Conference, and I will give you first dibs, sir. Give me one team that will make it that wasn't from last year and one team that's going to fall out.
All right. So I think I got this really wrong. I think I remember a couple years ago, John, I was like, this is when Boston was still humming. I was like, the Bruins won't make the postseason, and then I think that was the year they had the best regular season in the history of hockey. You know what? I am looking at the Columbus Blue Jackets, John. So I'm going to say, and maybe it's just my personal hope, I think that they had a good run, and I think that they fell a little bit. We know they fell a little bit short. I would love them to turn that corner. So my pick, I hope I didn't steal it from you, is the Columbus Blue Jackets, who missed, that they are going to make it in 25-26.
And who's going to fall out?
Oh, man. Okay. Wait a second. Give me. I have a couple.
Okay.
Why don't you give me your miss to make, and then I'll jump back in.
Okay, I will. So in efforts of playing the game, I will give you the answer. My realistic answer is I think the seeds will stay the same. 100% that is my official response for the season. But as far as the game, my team to go in will indeed also be the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I know it's really tough. Again, it's pretty impossible. It'd be wrong to say that Ottawa or Montreal doesn't make it. But I would say if I have to take one that doesn't, I still think Montreal will get in. Give me Ottawa to leave.
Okay, I like that. Ottawa to leave, and here's what I'm going to say. Even though the Canadians, and they snuck in, this is a little bit of a cheap choice. I already said it. I'm going to say it's almost a one-for-one switch, because as we look at those standings, 91 points for the Canadians last year, 89 for the Jackets. Basically, I'm saying flip them. So I'm not taking a huge swing. Excuse me, in the East. Canadians drop out, Jackets in.
Yeah, and I think from what Cooper and I are essentially telling you, for realistic, not in games purposes, we probably think the seeding is going to stay the same. There really isn't going to be much movement, but for the sake of doing so, I like those picks in the West. I'm going to go very bold, and I'm going to fall flat on my face here, but I want to do it just because. Again, I'm not going to take the Flames to get in just yet, but I will say next year, my season preview, I'm going to take both the Flames and the Red Wings to make it. You've heard that here first. But as far as a team to leave, this is not going to happen, but I do wonder, as we were all on the broadcast, Alec is in here now, we were shocked when Jake Ottinger was pulled and Peter DeBoer made that move to take out his star goaltender, and the Dallas Stars fell apart when they really shouldn't have. Give me Dallas Stars to miss under rebirth of head coach Glenn Gullickson. I'm going to insert the Utah Mammoth.
Wow, John. I knew you'd finish with a big swing, my friend. You've had some hot takes. You got on your soapbox earlier, rightfully, as we said. That's a big one. We're talking about a 106-point team.
Yes.
Yeah, major change for the Stars. And Glenn Gullickson, who, hey, he was running a heck of a power play in Edmonton. He had a little time with the Flames, didn't go all that well as the head man. I think you might be onto something. I'm not going there with it, but I'm going to take it to, guess what, John? I'm going to say the Los Angeles Kings actually miss in this coming season, and that's pretty close.
Yeah.
They were a 105-point team, second there in the Pacific, and actually finished with more regular season points than the Oilers. So that's close to you. Maybe you inspired me there. I had a couple in my mind. I was thinking the Kings, and then the Blues would have been the easier choice. But I went easy in the East with the Canadians. So I'm going to take a page out of your book. I'm going Kings are falling out. I say they fall into the spot that the Flames occupied, which was just missing that second wild card. And I'm going to say that I'm with you, my friend. The Mammoths have some of that good early juju, some of that expansion magic, and they are going to hop in to a spot this coming season. There you go.
Well, I like our picks this year. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So for those that are following along, get yourself a pen and paper, or if not, that you can go ahead and listen to this when this gets re-uploaded again. But I do have an announcement to share. I wasn't able to send it across social media yet because I didn't want to spoil the surprise, but I'm going to make it on the show now. So my dulcet tones will be on TV. It is August 1st, 8 a.m. on ESPN2. And yes, I know this sounds like the movie Dodgeball with ESPN Ocho as far as the programming side of it, but I was asked to do some voiceover and some play-by-play for a show that was already shot. It's it's male jumping on Lake Geneva. So you have contestants that jump over. They try to get 4 new people that come in every year to deliver mail to really rich people that have homes on the island. So I'm going to have some play-by-play for you on August 1st at 8 a.m. on ESPN2, so record it.
That is fantastic news, my friend. Wait a minute. Let me check my calendar here. We are talking a week from today. We're talking Friday the 1st, bright and early in the morning.
Yes.
John Ott is making his ESPN debut. Who knew it would be in that way? And I absolutely love it, my friend. You're always full of surprises, and congratulations to you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So if anyone that has any DVR recording, you can set that one up there on August 1st at 8 a.m. and we'll see how it goes. Admittedly, the first, because I've never done that before, but the first doc after the few, that was a little rough and rigid the first time, but we had some fun with it. And also at the end of that, there will be a big surprise. And I wanted to make sure not to spoil all that. So if you do watch it, there might be a certain clip that goes viral, or at least I'm hoping so for the right reasons.
Oh my God! Well, John, if the surprise is I don't know how it can be bigger than your Dallas Stars falling out of the playoffs prediction. I mean, that's well, okay. I'll give you a silver medal on the surprise because I think that your prediction for Dallas is going to go viral too. So you'll have 2 viral moments in about a week, which I think is awesome.
So we know we got the October coming up there alongside with the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers were the next night between Vancouver as they start on the road. With the Olympic break, we're going to have a lot of back-to-backs. Again, the Flames have the least with 9 up to 16 for a lot of other teams, but a lot of 3 games in 4 nights. The NHL season will be starting very, very soon, and I can't wait to get back there with you. Maybe even on opening night with the Flames.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, my friend. That's a tradition that I don't want to miss out on. So thank you also for keeping me in the loop here. And Alex, shout out to you, my friend. I know we'll be working together when this season gets underway. And it's always a surprise. Time flies here and feels like it was the height of summer. And we're already kind of inching toward, hey, we're talking about the next hockey season. We're inching toward fall. And it's going to be an exciting year for a lot of franchises, for the 3 of us, certainly. And John, I always salute you, my friend, the notes, the research. You're a true professional, and I can't wait to see what happens with our predictions, and I can't wait to get started.
Well, thank you for joining me again to do this. I hope I kept everything timely, and I can't wait to get back in the booth with you.
You got it, my friend. All right, both of you, and John, you enjoy the rest of what is a moderate break, and everyone, don't forget, August 1st, 8 a.m. Now, is that, John, before we leave?
Yes.
8 a.m. Central? I have to know, because I'm not here in the West.
Yeah, it's 8 a.m. East, so it'd be like 5 a.m. for you, right? Correct. So just tape it. You don't have to watch it live.
No, I'm getting up for you. I'm setting an alarm. My iPhone's going to be going crazy. I'm getting up. I'm putting on ESPN2, and I can't wait to hear your work. And your work tonight was impeccable, as always. It's going to be an exciting season once it kicks off.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. The only thing I want to say before I close here, if you do happen to watch that, please leave me some text and some laughing emojis because I want everybody to enjoy it.
All right, just to be safe, text us give us the title. I know we got the time, but send us the info so we can get all that in. And I can't wait to see it.
All right, I will. We'll talk soon. Peace.
You got it.